Hi, everybody. This is Maxine Taylor, and today is October 30th, 2018. I'm giving you the date because so much is happening so quickly. I want to be able to document this with you. I'm wearing black out of love and a feeling of closeness with all the people in Philadelphia who have lost loved ones in the horrific massacre at that magnificent synagogue. It is, there just are no words. To all of you who are mourning the loss of a friend or a loved one, or both, my heart is with you and I'm sitting shiva with you. For those of you who are not familiar with that, after somebody dies in Judaism, there is a period of mourning, particularly in Orthodox Judaism, but it can be Reform, conservative or Reform as well. People sit on these very hard benches for 8 days, 7-8 days. They cover the mirrors because they don't take time to fuss with their appearance. And men don't shave. They rend their clothing, and rather than doing that, they will wear a black ribbon that has been ripped. Friends and relatives come in bringing food and comfort because this is the time to let it all hang out and to mourn and grieve the loss of the relatives. Now, there were so many killed during this massacre that it's my understanding that they're only able to bury 2 each day. And so officials, from the mayor to rabbis to the leaders of organizations, local community leaders, have requested that Trump not visit this week out of respect for the dead, out of respect for all those who are sitting shiva, and to allow the dead to be buried. So guess what? He's flying in there today. No comment. No comment. Now, a lot of people have been asking me, so what's going on celestially? What all is they saying causing this? The planets don't cause it, they reflect it. So let me take you back to last week during my full moon ceremony, which is always exquisite. Some of you have attended, you know it is life-changing. Not because of me, but because of you. I'm just the leader. And so I was explaining to everybody the impact, the importance of this full moon that we had last week in 1 degree of Taurus. The importance was that it was conjunct or next to Uranus, explosion, explosiveness. Uranus is the rebel. Uranus is the unexpected. Uranus is the one that sits in the most highly elevated position. I don't think I have a copy of Trump's natal chart here that is simplified, but it sits on Uranus, his Uranus, in his 10th house of his public image and his career. And we see it every day, that there is an explosion, there is unexpected, there is change, there is saying one thing 1 minute and then changing it. That's Uranus. That's what it is. And I said, because I hadn't watched the news that day, I said, I haven't heard of anything explosive. The full moon ceremony starts at 7, it ends at 8. I said, however, this full moon, while it's conjunct Uranus, is also part of a grand cross. And I've talked about this grand cross before. Some of you have already ordered my special, my holiday, Crazy Holidays special, And one of the things I include in it is this Grand Cross and what its impact is in your birth chart. In light of everything that's been going on, I know you're going to want to get that. Just go to my website, Maxine Taylor, and all the information is there. So, okay, back to the full moon ceremony. I digress. Gemini, I'm all over the place. So I said, it's part of this Grand Cross or Grand Square. And I hadn't heard of anything going on because I hadn't watched the news. By the time I got home at 8:30 that evening, it was all over the news that there were pipe bombs that had been sent by another crazy person to Trump's detractors, the people that Trump has badmouthed or criticized or whoever. And I thought, wow, that's incredible. I think it was because the whole thing was part of that beautiful Grand Cross that the bombs did not go off and no one was hurt. I don't think that some of the people knew. I know Trump knew, but on the news they said he hadn't told Obama or some of the other people involved. But I'm sure they found out in plenty of time. So that was the first thing. And then this egregious massacre at that synagogue in Philadelphia, a house of worship where people were celebrating the Sabbath. That's part of that full moon. Remember, we feel the effects of a full moon for 2 weeks thereafter. Then we have the new moon when things start growing again, and we feel that for 2 weeks. Interestingly enough, I know some of you already know this, the next new moon is November 7th, the day after the elections. Now, usually on the dark of the moon, which is 2 days before the new moon, there's not a lot of energy going on. I do feel that people are galvanized now to be energized, to vote, to get out there and do what it takes to get to the polls. Many of us have already voted. My ballot, I sent that in weeks ago, so I won't have to stand in line. Some people are going to have to do that. And on the dark of the moon, there is lower energy, but I do feel that the inner energy that people are now feeling in light of everything that has gone on. And remember, there are still several days until midterm, so there's more that can easily surface. I haven't done Trump's chart for the next couple of days. And I'll tell you guys, when I first started doing this Trumpology report, I figured I'd do it once in a while. Then I realized I was going to be doing it once a month. I started by doing readings, as you know, solar charts on the people he hired, and then, of course, through the revolving door, shortly thereafter, fired, because that's just how it was going. But I started with Alec Baldwin's chart, comparing it to Trump's, because he did such a masterful job of impersonating Trump. Now what I'm saying is I have to do a Trumpology report more often. I may be back with you later today as I look at what is going on in the news, because I've got a subject that I feel is real important, and I will get back with you. So, all right, time to talk about Trump. We'll start with Trump and then go to the United States. All right. So, let me share this with you. I've got paper. You know how it is when I do this. I've got papers piled up everywhere. So, as I like to say, talk amongst yourselves, and here we go. The path of the sun, sorry about this lighting, the path of the sun in Trump's chart is, it starts in his third house. Now, this is the house of communication. And you know, I have talked with you every time his third house is triggered. I tell you that he's going to be talking a lot. And there's always somebody who calls me or writes me and says, he always talks. What do you mean he's going to be talking a lot? Well, you have noticed, I'm sure, that the rhetoric, the tweets have increased in subject and intensity, flip-flopping back and forth. So the new moon on the 7th, the day after the elections, sits right on his sun, which means lots of communication, lots of talking, probably traveling. Let's see what else we've got here. The sun during this month, really just the very first part of the month on the 2nd, is squaring his Pluto in his 12th house. And so there's lots of behind the scenes shakeup going on, power play. As the month moves forward from the 18th to the 21st, the sun squares Mars, which sits behind his ascendant, and his ascendant. So he's actually fighting with himself. So expect to see a lot of equivocating or changing of mind and ideas during that time. Now, on the 16th of the month, is an important date. The sun enters his 4th house of home, family, and real estate matters. And now this can mean numbers of things. Once again, when I predicted explosions as a result of the full moon last Wednesday, I had no idea that it was going to be, that it would manifest the way it did in pipe bombs. Fortunately, they didn't go off because of that Grand Cross, and the massacre with gunfire. So when I talk about the fact that the sun is entering his 4th house of home, family, and real estate, this is what is going to come up. There can be family issues that come up. There can be real estate issues, whether domestic or international, that come up for him. So we're going to be aware of that. Now, I mentioned the 16th, very important time. Look at here. I've got Venus, Mercury, and Mars. I put them on the same chart. It's just easier to see them this way. While they do not trigger any planets, man, oh man, get ready. Venus, the planet of love and wonderful ideas, is sitting in Trump's 3rd house. You might say, well, that would make him very loving in the way he speaks. I can only hope that when he shows up in Philadelphia, when he shows up at those funerals, that he has a script in front of him that is laced with love, written beautifully, and that he follows it. And with Venus in his 3rd house, he could, all right? And that, you know, I'll be holding my breath to see what he says, but this is really great. Venus, however, is retrograde. It has been retrograde since October 5th. Now, Venus rules love and beauty and money and all things lovely. It's in his 3rd house, so he's, wherever it is, it's like a Mercury retrograde. Everything is unsettled. So he's changing his mind about stuff. You might say, well, he always does that. Yeah, but it's more vital now. It's more important now, particularly before the elections. Okay, on the 16th, yeah, that 16th. On the 16th of November, Venus goes direct. And you know, when a planet goes direct, it moves forward, seemingly, in the heavens. It doesn't go backwards or forward, but that's what it looks like. Cool. But there's confusion during that time. And so as Venus is going to stay in that third house this whole month of November. But look at this. Mercury, planet of communication, correspondence, transportation. It's sitting in his fourth house of home, family, and real estate. And on the 16th, it too goes retrograde. Venus, retrograde. Not two, I should say. Venus goes direct on the 16th. Mercury goes retrograde on the 16th. It's like they're tag teaming each other. Venus passes the baton off, and the sun, the giver of life, moves into his fourth house. Now, this can bring about success and fulfillment as well, because it's the giver of life. This is the area that is lit up. Now, Thanksgiving is going to be occurring during this month. So this is him spending time at home. Now, what is his home? Is it the White House? Is it Mar-a-Lago? Is it Trump Tower? Is it one of his real estate holdings? Wherever it is, it's lit up, so to speak, it's given life. With Mercury going retrograde, this is where there is confusion relating to home, family, and real estate. And Mercury is going to stay retrograde till December 6th. Yeah. Again, in the area that provides emotional fulfillment, so that he can have issues with his family members, his sons in particular, I would think. Not necessarily Melania. Let's move over to Mars, shall we? Here's Mars in the 6th house of work, health, and service, and workers, employees. And then on, oh my goodness, the 16th, it crosses into his 7th house of wife. It crosses into his 7th house of open enemies or allies, contracts, negotiations, so that he might announce a new contract. Melania might get a little more aggressive. Our open enemies could easily become more aggressive. Now remember, Mars is where we throw up, it's what we fight with and fight for. So again, the 6th house here is work, it's employees, it's subordinates. And when it enters that 7th house, when it crosses that cusp, because the cusp is the strongest area of the house, excuse me, that's when things come to light. And he's out there. He's putting his attention on other people. He's making contracts, or he's fighting over contracts. That's why it can be a prenup. It can be any type of contract he has signed or wants to sign. Keep your eyes open around the 16th. I may be back on the air with you. It looks like I'm gonna have to keep, I like to do these things and then put them up and read your charts for you, which I love to do, because it's very draining for me to do this, but I may have to. Okay, let's keep on going. Now, I talked with you about the Grand Cross, and this is something I do in my special. I see what this Grand Cross is doing in your birth chart, and for some of you, and you already know who you are because you've received your video from me. Some of you have the T cross. Well, all of us will have the T cross. Let me explain what this means. Right now, right around Pumpkin Day, right around Halloween, day before Halloween, Uranus, this is where the full moon was in Trump's chart, in his 9th house of ideas, concepts, philosophy. This is long distance travel and foreign relationships. Uranus is the unexpected. It's the rebel. Now, we have a lovely balance. It's like a box. It's a square. You can call it a grand cross or a grand square. Same thing. Uranus is in opposition to Venus. Venus is down here in his third house. Ideas, lovely communication. The North Node, the area of blessings, of success, is right smack dab on his 12th cusp. The cusp is so strong in the chart. And so behind the scenes, negotiations are really helpful right now, very successful. Now, the North Node is going to back up into his 11th house after this month. The South Node, which is the area of loss, traditionally, unless you're balancing them, and they are balanced, is right on his 6th cusp of health, work, service, underlings, employees. And so this is what his grand cross looks like. I know you're going to want to see what yours looks like. So yours is going to be different from his, okay? Different houses. Now, as we move forward through November and December and January, Venus moves into the 4th house. It no longer balances this grand cross. And so the empty arm of Uranus just blurting it out like it is, acting impulsively, being the rebel, squaring the nose of private enemies, behind the scenes enemies, and workers. It will empty into that 3rd house where there's going to be lots of travel, lots of communication, lots of talking again. And I agree with you. He's always talking. He loves to talk. He's Gemini. I get it. However, you know how I've said for the longest time, we ain't seen nothing yet. We ain't seen nothing yet. In a couple of years, well, by 2023 or so, Uranus is going to start hitting that midheaven. It's going to be interesting because that rebellion is going to be public. Even more so. You might say it is public. Yes, but when it hits the midheaven, there'll be a big change in his public image. But I'm getting ahead of myself. See, the problem when you can read a chart is you can see down the road, you just don't know how it's going to manifest. That's frustrating. So let's take a look at this chart. Now, these are the summer eclipses. Let me find my paper here that lists them. Shoot, I can't. All right. Doesn't matter what the dates are. The summer eclipses are at their peak 3 to 4 months after they occur. That's right now. Absolutely right now. Oh, and I want to add something. Let me just go back here to these charts and add after the new moon on the 7th, we have the full moon on the 23rd, and Trump's public image comes to a head. He's in his element. He's on stage. He is getting all kinds of attention and leadership accolades. Excuse me, I left that out there. Typical Gemini. I'm going to blame it on Venus retrograde. Yes, it's convenient. No, Venus didn't make me do it, but I'm going to blame Venus retrograde on it. Okay. So the full moon's in his 10th house, helping his public image, giving him recognition. I don't know what conference he's attending or what he will have done to claim authority and leadership, but be looking for it then. Okay, now back to these some summertime eclipses. They all happen this past summer. First one, I really wish I could find those dates for you, but okay, they were July and August. We had a solar eclipse. This is his 11th house of friends and group activities. And Venus is in his 11th house. He loves his friends. Saturn, he expects responsibility from his friends. He takes his friendships very, very seriously. And I'm thinking of Kavanaugh because he essentially got Kavanaugh appointed to the Supreme Court. And this would have been very fulfilling for him. There's a solid aspect tied in with Saturn. It's reality. And he does expect loyalty from his friends. And there's Venus, love. So this particular eclipse could have been very, very helpful for him. It was helpful when I think of Kavanaugh. And it also means he could make friends with foreign leaders. That's interesting because he's part of the Putin fan club, the Kim Jong-un fan club. And so this could be the feeling of friendship with them. All right. We had a lunar eclipse in his 6th house. This deals with health, and I'm talking about health plans, his own health, but this is the working class. This deals with subordinates, employees. And so there's some change that is being made in his employee situation, which we know that's predictable. We know his pattern. You don't need astrology to know his pattern. So there are changes made in his work, in his job, in the employee situation. The big eclipse, as far as I was concerned, that really told a lot, besides the Kavanaugh appointment fitting in very well with the 11th house eclipse on his Venus and Saturn, is the solar eclipse that sat at his Pluto-Mars midpoint. And the midpoint between two planets is a powerful spot because it sends its elbows out. It hits both of them in the ribs, so to speak. Pluto is the planet of control or transformation. It's all or nothing. This 12th house is hidden. It's behind the scenes activities of a personal nature, of a business nature. It deals with all of our hidden enemies, including those who may not be there. This can involve a little bit, as many of you who study astrology know, the 12th house can bring a little bit of paranoia in depending on what's going on there because it's all bringing up the subconscious. And the eclipse is on Mars as well. Remember, the midpoint between Pluto and Mars. Mars is gunfire. Mars is rage. Mars is shoot from the hip. And so this eclipse triggered lots of behind the scenes arguing, fighting, whether it's with our hidden enemies or they would be Trump's hidden enemies. People he considered to be enemies. This is not the United States chart. I'll get to that in a minute. It's Trump's hidden enemies. They're hidden from view and they're affecting his subconscious because the 12th house is the subconscious. So that's what's going on now, October, November, and December. Now, you might say, well, this eclipse sitting here on his 11th house, friends, hopes, and wishes, and group activities could be very, very helpful in the midterms for him. I mean, after all, he wants his friends elected, and he's been out there campaigning for various people. Well, let's take a look briefly at what's going on. Remember, okay. You know, I want to add something else that just occurred to me. This is why astrologers love to sleep on the charts. Look at here. When Mars crosses his 7th house of open enemies, it opposes his ascendant. And so that's other people fighting with him, at him. Now, he's going out there and fighting with other people, one-on-one perhaps, because 7th house is one-on-one. But this is other people fighting with him. It sits on his Mars in the 12th and on his ascendant. Now, it also, Mars trines his 10th house and sextiles his 4th, so his public image is good. That would be the first few days of the month, 1st through the 3rd. Now, you're used to this Gemini jumping all over the place. This is the diurnal for Trump on November 6th. I did it for Washington, D.C. It is not applicable necessarily anywhere else. I'm assuming he's going to be in D.C., but I don't know that he's going to be in D.C. On election night. I was thinking, well, what if he's in Mar-a-Lago? What if he's in New York City? I didn't do the charts for those two places simply because his residence is the White House, and it seems very logical. And here again, Uranus in his chart, is running amok. Logic doesn't come into it, but this is it for DC. I've done this part that I'm going to share with you before, not this part. The diurnal chart tells exactly what's going to happen on a particular day. Okay, this is Trump, this is the ascendant, this is other people, this is his open enemies. It's also his partner, his contracts. But because this is the day of the midterm elections, I'm interpreting it from that standpoint. You might say, well, that's Melania. Cool, you may be right. The problem with the diurnal is you have to wait until the date occurs to be able to say, oh, that's how it manifested, because it's all raw potential and we all have free will. With his natal sun is 22 degrees Gemini. The descendant, the 7th house cusp, is 22 of Gemini. It has to be within a degree of the cusp. We don't do anything with planets sitting in the middle of the house. We just do the cusps. It works. I learned how to do this particular type of chart in, I want to say 1969, 1970. Fabulous. So other people get the light, get the win, if you will. And I had one lady, I think it was, say on my YouTube channel, but he's not running for office. I don't get it. No, he's not running for office, but he's got friends who are, and he wants to set them up so that he has the Congress and Senate and Supreme Court where he wants them to be. Got it? So that's other people. And so who would his open enemies be? Who would the other group be? The Democrats is the way I'm looking at it. And because Venus is retrograde and the election occurs on the dark of the moon, I looked ahead. Now, my handwriting is atrocious, I know it. That's the transiting south node. It's the true node in 2951 Capricorn. The second cusp is 28 something. I didn't put the minutes in. So it's 28 and 29. The south node is the area of loss in a mundane chart. It doesn't give you what you want. You might say, well, that second house is money. It's more than money. It's what you want. It's what you want to have, what you want to hold in your hand. Your values, your possessions. It can be a person. If you think you own somebody and you do a diurnal and you have second house activity and that's all it is, that person is the one that you own. That's your possession, and that's how you read the chart. A little complicated, but it works. I've learned a lot about astrology the past 50 years, and I've seen it happen myself. So the day after the election, he either loses money or he doesn't get what he wants, but the other guy does. The transiting north node is on the 8th cusp. So this is the other person. This is the other person's money. This is the progressed midheaven. The progressed midheaven. This is Trump's progressed midheaven. 2 days after the election. The 8th cusp is 28. His progressed midheaven is 0 Leo. 2 days later, his midheaven, his public image, sits on the 8th cusp of symbolic death and rebirth. Out with the old, in with the new. It also triggers the psychic detective within him. And so the progressed IC, the cusp of the fourth, midheaven is the cusp of the 10th house. The IC, the Imam Seeli, is the cusp of the 4th house. It sits on his 2nd cusp. You might say, well, does that mean that he gets money through real estate at that time? You know, that's entirely possible. But I think it ties in with the election, the midterms. It's 2 days out. I don't know what is going to happen, if they're going to call for a revote. We certainly want the elections to be handled honestly and without hacking. And yeah, and I'd like $1 million too. So we'll see what happens. Now, on the day of the midterms, I looked at Trump's chart, and the transiting Venus is sextile his Mars ascendant. Mars is quincunx his Venus in the 11th, so he has to adjust his values and what have you. Transiting Saturn has been squaring his Neptune, so he's looking very realistically at his dream, not that fulfilling. Transiting Uranus is trine his ascendant, separating, not bad. The day after the election, November 7th, the new moon, that transiting Uranus, trine his ascendant, is exact. Now, this is the kind of stuff astrologers do, and if I've lost some of you in this, just ignore it. The bottom line is, I don't see the transits backing his candidates the way he would like. That's the way I'm interpreting this. So, all right, that's Trump. Let's talk about the United States. And then I'm going to be working on a topic that I think may be of interest to you, and I may be back with you later today. So here we have the beautiful United States. And I've got our natal chart. I use the 7 Gemini ascendant with Uranus on the ascendant in the 1st house. So let's just look and see what's going on here. In the United States chart, it's very, very interesting what's going on here. The sun, the giver of life, is sitting in our 6th house of health. Now, it's more than health, but the number one issue in this election is health care. And so here is the sun lighting that up. Yay! This is so cool. And the new moon sits on that. And so people are going to be very interested and very vocal about health care. Now, the 6th house also deals with the military, with jobs. And now a lot of people have said, oh, well, we have more jobs. Yeah, we do, but they're not necessarily high-paying jobs, is what I'm hearing. People are telling me this. I'm self-employed. That does not affect me personally, but I know it affects a lot of people. And so there should be more jobs available. That's fabulous. The sixth house is civil servants of all types, pets, our food. Very interesting. Tariffs, of course, can affect the price of food. Oh, they already have begun to do that. Yes, they sure have. Animals, police, fire department. Now, on the 29th of the month, in other words, all November, the sun is sitting in that sixth house. At the very, very end of the month, it moves into our seventh house of the public, international affairs, war, lawyers, politics, marriage and divorce, and the lower courts. So when you have a seventh house sun, you're dealing with the public. You're dealing with other people. Get this off of my screen. And so this is really cool. The full moon, though, sits in our 12th house of hidden enemies, bribery, spies. There's a lot that's going on we'll never know about. Prisons, maybe prison reform, jails, criminals, the past. Interestingly enough, the 12th house used to deal with slavery. And fortunately, the way I see it, things have improved in that area, to say the least. So the full moon is putting light on all those areas. I think that's incredibly interesting. Now, Mercury. Let's talk about Mercury. It's going to go it's in the seventh house now, so there's lots of talk with international, over international affairs, contracts, negotiations, lawyers, politics, the lower courts. It goes retrograde on the 16th and backs up into that sixth house then. So we're still working on health care, employees, government workers, civil servants, animals, food. And so I would hope that some of this seventh house activity would be negotiations that will help with our tariffs, that will bring down the price of food, because the price of food has been and will continue to increase. What seems to be going on here? Okay. Now, I've got papers everywhere, as you know. Venus has been in our sixth house of civil servants, police, firemen, jobs, food, employees, health. So we've got Mercury, Venus, and the sun all lighting up the area of work, health, and service. Mars, in the United States charts, Mars is sitting in the 10th house of the presidency, our public image. It rules our public reputation, and our reputation now is one of war. Swell. It's the party in power. And it's also the president. Now, it doesn't sit on the moon or on the midheaven, but it deals with our leadership. Next chart. I think I'll do the summer eclipses because they are so interesting to me. I do have the dates here on this one. The first one, not that it matters, but the first one was July 12th. This eclipse sat right on our third cusp in the house of communication, transportation, lots of tragedies involved with transportation. Sits on our Mercury, lots of communication, lots of talking. You know, you can talk and say nothing. And that's unfortunately the truth. Let me get my glasses here so I don't miss anything. Okay. News, reporters. With the eclipse, there are lots of news reports. And that's how we get our news, is from these wonderful reporters who dig deep. No matter which side of the aisle you're on, or which channel you prefer, or which paper you read, whether you hold it in your hand or it's online, it's because of the reporters that we have this information and the work that they do to get it done accurately. I would not want their job at all. It deals with the mail, with public opinion, with traffic and travel, books, newspapers, neighborhoods, schools, teachers, and of course, public transportation. Okay, all this October, November, and December. July 27th, this eclipse was the one that concerned me. It sat on our south node because this deals not just with the upper courts, the ninth house, but foreign travel, foreign trade. And it doesn't look good. It's the south node. Higher education, religion, the clergy. Again, the Catholic Church is being investigated for all sorts of sexual misconduct. Here we go. One more time. Hopefully this will unearth it. I just saw something on 60 Minutes the other night that indicated that great progress is being made unearthing priests whose transgressions had been hidden for years and are now surfacing. Advertising, science, the Supreme Court. Okay, South Node there. Not, world trade, and of course, universities. And then the final eclipse was August 11th, and this one fell right on our fourth cusp, the IC. The fourth house is the party out of power. So there we go. The Democrats are triggered right there. Republicans not triggered with this eclipse, with any eclipses. Democrats, this deals with real estate, domestic affairs, the weather, land. Oh, we won't even go into global warming. We'd be here for days. Farmers, losing money, losing their farms, getting subsidies, wanting income instead of subsidies, builders, crops, mines, and seniors. So this is what is going on right now. All right, where was that? Grand Cross in the United States chart. Okay. The transiting south node is in our ninth house, which is very interesting because our natal south node is in our ninth house. And in the next few months, the transiting south node is going to sit on our natal north node. I will tell you when that is. It's just a short time away. It's a double south node whammy. Just watch my videos. I'll keep you posted. Now, conversely, transiting north node, well, I put it in the natal part, but, well, it should be in the natal part because in our natal chart, the the North Node is in the third house. And so rather than communicating with people at a distance, it's our neighbors and our neighborhoods that will do well. Okay? Uranus in the 12th. The 12th house deals with all kinds of behind the scenes activities, and there's all kind of rebellion going on there. Unexpected. Prisons, hospitals, spies, charitable institutions, seclusion, bribery, secret societies, welfare. There we go. And there's Venus, the other arm of that grand cross, bringing love and blessings to the military, to health, to our jobs, to our crops, to our animals. And we've got that lovely opposition between the North and South Node, opposition between Venus and Uranus. So it's balanced. So Venus moves out of range. And then we have what's called a T cross. And the empty arm of that T cross, Venus will not be sitting in. This is like just the next couple of months. The empty arm is that 6th house of health, healthcare, military, jobs, crops, animals, food, police and fire. So that's the way Trump and the United States look. If you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with me. My website is MaxineTaylor.com. I encourage you to get a copy of your next 3-month forecast. Get that special while it's still available. I'm not going to keep it up much longer because I want to give you your money's worth. And, you know, as we move closer to the end of the year, it won't pay for itself for you. So I'll be back in touch very soon. Thank you, so many of you who offer suggestions about the charts I might do, the topics I might cover, the people I might read. I love some of your posts. And let me suggest something to you. This has nothing to do with Trump or the country. It has to do with you. How do we get through what's going on now, the craziness? I mean, there's a reason I called my special the Crazy Holidays Special. The way I do it is I surround myself with loving, caring friends. I do things that make me happy, including chocolate, okay? Just kidding, but not so much. If you can lift your spirits every day and stand back and realize that our life here is a movie. We're looking at a movie. And we get involved in it because our emotional buttons are punched. Watch the movie like you're in a theater. Get your popcorn, get your Diet Coke, and just observe it as somebody observing a life. That will give you objectivity. Another thing I do all the time, I love our nighttime talk show comedic hosts. I record all of them and I watch them the next day because laughter is the best medicine. If I can laugh, I take in air. I feel better. And this is why so many of our comics are so popular now, because they serve a much greater purpose than they might even realize. So I'm thankful for them. And just give thanks for the sweet, wonderful people in your life, the ones who smile at you when you're in the grocery store, the people you've never met who smile at you. That's a love connection. You don't care what their political affiliation is. I don't care what it is. I don't care what your nationality is. I don't care your sexual preference. If you come from love, we are one. And so, dear friends, until we meet again, which may be later on today, may the stars shine brightly on you and yours. Bye for now.